I mean, certainly it impacts and affects everyone in the home. There's a study here in the U.S. that noted that when children reside in a home where domestic violence occurs, I mean, by their definition, they were referring to intimate partner abuse, partner violence. But when children just reside in a home where that occurs, they are at 60 times the risk of the general U.S. child population for experiencing direct abuse and neglect themselves. So it often does turn where they're the direct intended victim. But I think they always are obviously a secondary victim or someone who's experiencing harm. I can't imagine a scenario where a child is living in a home where abuse occurs and they're not significantly harmed and impacted by it.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense. Like, again, if you're harmed, I often say, we've got non-human animals, children, adults in these homes. If you abuse or harm any of those three groups, you're going to affect and harm all three groups. I view them as a team. They're so interconnected and intertwined. I even had a perpetrator once say, and it's kind of odd. A lot of times, obviously, perpetrators don't like to own that they're doing anything wrong. We know that can often be the case. But in this instance, this perpetrator did say, yes, I'll admit, like, I was abusive. I was harmful to my son's mother, but I never harmed my child. Again, it's that flawed thinking. Abusers don't get to pick and choose who's harmed by the abuse. They may have a direct target, but everyone in that home is going to experience it in some way, and obviously in a negative manner.
Yes, that's a super key point, and I have to say from my own experience in our practice, helping people with BPD, CPTSD, recovering from childhood trauma, emotional neglect, that a lot of the people that are on the recovery journey, they get caught up on the point that nothing may not have happened directly at them, so they don't necessarily see that their situation was so bad, but like you said, experiencing mum and dad having verbal violence or even physical altercations and other forms of abuse just in the home creates a significantly stressful environment. And living in a stressful environment that a child can't get out of is seriously traumatic.
No, absolutely. Like I said, just an excellent point. One of the things I didn't mention is so after my dad left, I feared every day that he would come back to kill my mom. Even though there had been no physical violence in the home, I had seen, unfortunately, many of these emotional abusers are excellent mask wearers. They're great at appearing one way in the community, very different at home.
Oh, yeah.
We'd even gone to our church and because we were very involved in the church, asked for help or noted what was going on. They wouldn't believe us. The response was, your dad teaches children's church sometimes and often goes to Sunday school. There's no way he could be abusive in the home. He was excellent at it. And so that always made me a little concerned because I knew what was behind the mask. I had seen it on more than one occasion of kind of a violent outburst of just, I remember so one of the other things I had made a deal with him that over the next 10 years after he left, I would meet him for dinner every week to 2 weeks. And I would pretend like everything was okay. We'd go out in public, we'd sit at a restaurant, and I would act like he and I had a great relationship in exchange that he would leave my sister alone, just as a way to. And again, now as a dad, I can't imagine even putting my child in a position to have to create a situation like that. But at one of those times, I was sitting there waiting for the food. I was there early, waiting for him to come, and I remember just seeing a man just go on a violent tirade in the parking lot. Everyone around me kind of gasping. I mean, it was really odd and scary. And then, of course, the feeling in your gut when you see the person calm down, walk in, and it's your dad. It's the person who's meeting you. So I had seen that side, and so I always feared that if I ever fell asleep or anything. So I much of that time, from 13 to 23, 27, not sleeping, not eating well. And so again, even though I wasn't the target, and many times I can remember thinking, I wish I was. Like I wish it was me that he was coming after or that was in the greatest danger, not my mom. Not these people that are around me that I care so much about.
Well, yeah, and that's certainly a very difficult situation for a child to be in, and a lot of emotions that a child would simply have a hard time to deal with, like that feeling of needing to care for, for the mother, for the siblings. I mean, being a protector, both physically and emotionally, in a young age, is a very stressful and traumatic situation. So, again, this is not something that's happening, I guess, directly at the child, but the child being in that situation is certainly under, constant stress and emotional trauma. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it takes over your whole life. It steals your childhood. We sometimes say, kids, grow up quickly, but but they don't really grow up quickly. They're just forced into a situation they're not ready for.
Yeah.
And I think that's often maybe a more accurate way to put that. So
Yeah, and you touched on a good point also that my wife made a short on just the other day, where she was saying that one of the more difficult parts of recovery and healing from childhood trauma and being in a home with where there's domestic abuse is just, I guess, accepting and mourning the loss of the childhood, of not being able to be a regular child, a regular teenager, about having to be in that role when other kids may not have had to do that. That's a very difficult and significant part of the healing journey, is to be able to let go of that childhood that wasn't what the person really wanted.
absolutely, and it's heartbreaking to think about, but I think it obviously impacts so many children around the world. So.